I think my shirt today is very on brand. It says stay positive, but also it's a little skeleton dude and he has little paper doll people, but they're skeletons. Hello, my name is Elise, and somehow it is already the end of October. This is going to be my October wrap-up for the month, and I sort of, a little bit stuck to my TBR. I mean, I only read a few books on my TBR, but that's a lot more than the 0 books on my TBR that I usually read, so I'm impressed with myself. I read a decent amount of books considering the fact that I was super busy, and I tried to throw in at least 1, maybe 2 spooky-ish reads for October, Halloween month, but knowing me, I don't really like horror that much, so there was a lot of soft contemporary books, not necessarily horror, scary, spooky books. But that's okay, I enjoyed a lot of these, and I hope some of them sound interesting to you too. The first book I read this month was I Hope You're Listening by Tom Ryan. It's a mystery, and it's about a girl named Dee who lives in this very small town, and when she was just a child, her best friend had been kidnapped. Then she runs this podcast called Radio Silent where she discusses cases about missing persons, and recently a case has come up in her own small town once again that kind of reflects the case of her missing best friend. I don't read too many mysteries, and I did think the beginning of this book was a bit slow. For a mystery especially, it was a bit hard to get into, but after I got maybe halfway done, it was excellent. The pacing was great. It started to pick up after the first half, and I liked the relationships with the characters, and the mystery was actually quite interesting. It's also a sapphic novel, which is cool, but the relationship isn't played up to be some huge dramatic part of the book. It just is. It's just a part of the book, not a huge significant detail, which I actually really liked because it felt very normal and not dramatized and some epic plot point where everyone's like, oh, you're what now? So I liked that part. I also thought the ending was interesting. I'm not sure if it was confusing or if I just didn't understand it or if I missed something, but I kind of had trouble understanding how the ending came to be. But other than that, I thought it was very entertaining, and it definitely made me want to read more mystery/thriller books because, again, I don't read many of those. Probably because I'm always afraid they're going to be scary, and I hate being scared. But I don't know, I really enjoyed this one. The next book I read was I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I was definitely scared to read this one because I got the impression that it was horror/thriller, and it was thriller. I wouldn't say it was horror, more thriller, but it's about a girl who's going to end her relationship with her boyfriend, but she keeps being very hesitant about ending the relationship, and it's hard for her to bring it up. And then she and her boyfriend go to visit her boyfriend's family, and it's just this very eerie, abandoned town type setting, and you don't really know what's going on in the book the entire time, at all. You don't know what's going on until the last page. I even finished the book and I still didn't know what was going on. There's a lot of deep philosophical conversations, which I actually thought were kind of boring at some points. Especially for a thriller, it just was a lot of words for a thriller. But other than that, it's just crafted around this setting where you don't really know what's going to happen or who's in this town or what's going to happen in the locations that these characters go to. I don't want to say anything else about this book because you're really not supposed to know what's going on. That's the entire point of the book, which is kind of why I was disappointed about it. I felt very confused the entire time. I don't know if that's because I just didn't have the brain cells for this book, but I finished the book and I didn't even realize I finished it. I was turning the page ready for the next chapter and it wasn't there. That was the end. So I kind of liked it, but kind of not. I will give credit to the author for actually making me want to turn every page and read it in one sitting, but the ending was a bit disappointing. I really wanted more clarification, and I know that was the author's intention, not to have clarification because you were supposed to be confused, but I hate being confused. The third book I read this month was You Know I'm No Good. The title is borrowed from an Amy Winehouse song, and I really, really enjoyed this one. It's the kind of very nitty-gritty, hard-hitting YA contemporary that I absolutely love. It's definitely meant for an older audience, even though it is a YA book, but it's about a girl named Mia. She's described as a troubled teen because she does all of the stereotypical troubled teen things. She does drugs, she drinks, she has sex, she breaks all the rules, and eventually her family gets sick of it and sends her off to a boarding school for girls that's supposed to reform her behavior. I really enjoyed this book because you'll definitely be familiar with this narrative of a troubled teen, but the author really encourages you to look beyond all of those stereotypes and this idea that kids who aren't perfectly in line with everyone else and are again troubled are in a way hopeless and can't be changed, or that they need to be changed. It really is a book that makes you want to empathize with the characters even if they break all the rules and they have so many different issues that they're working through. I really loved the relationships in this book. It had a really great theme of friendship, and even though the characters all were in this terrible situation where they're in a boarding school and the thing they have in common is that they don't really fit in to society and they don't like to follow the rules, I just really appreciated that the characters were still able to bond over more than just trauma. They were actually able to form real friendships, and I just thought that was a sweet little component to this otherwise hard-hitting novel. The next book I read was The Barren Grounds. This is a middle grade book, and it's about two Indigenous children who are foster children, and they have lots of fights with their family and each other, and eventually together they discover this portal to another world, and it is this world depicted on the cover here, just this snowy land full of these fantastical creatures. At the surface, this story is about survival and learning how to survive in this world that the two children have discovered, but if you look deeper into that, it's a story about culture and friendship and family and finding out where you belong. I loved the themes of culture in here. There's many problems with the characters where they feel like they don't belong in their foster family or at school or in their friend groups, and it's hard for the characters to understand where their place in the world is, and that's something that's discovered in this book. I really am looking forward to the other books in this series because this is the first of the series, and if you enjoy middle grade, I would highly recommend this because I thought the world was so beautifully created and the characters were so real, and it really was a throwback to when I was 12 because the characters were so angry and down to earth, and I loved it. And also bonus points for the Indigenous rep because it was great, and I just love the theme of culture in here and family and friendship. The next book I read was How to Be Ace, a memoir of growing up asexual. This, as you can tell by the cover, is a memoir about someone who grew up asexual and her experiences in childhood of discovering she was ace, and it is in graphic novel format. I was super excited to read this one because that is definitely an identity that is not often covered, especially not in graphic novels, so I thought that was interesting. Overall, I thought it was very good. It offered a great explanation of what asexuality is and offered some little tidbits from the author's own personal experiences. I would say it didn't offer much to my understanding in the way that it didn't add anything I didn't already know, but if you don't know much about asexuality, I thought it was excellent, and if you're just interested in someone else's experience, it's also a great read. Overall, I really did enjoy it. I just wanted a bit more from it, but I think the way it is, it's still good, and again, that kind of topic is rarely covered, so overall I think I would recommend it. The next book I read was Black Sun. I'm sure many of you have either heard of that book or maybe have already read it. It is an adult fantasy novel based on pre-Columbian American civilization, and overall the plotting was fantastic, the writing style was so great, the characters were wonderful, it had such a great array of diverse characters. I mean, seriously, this book really impressed me with the kind of representation it held. I would say the only reason I probably did not enjoy it as much as other people is that I don't like reading fantasy, and jumping from not liking fantasy to adult fantasy was kind of a lot for me. I mean, I really have a hard time immersing myself in fantasy type worlds, but coming from someone who doesn't normally read or enjoy fantasy, I really liked this one. So that's saying a lot because, again, I often put down fantasies no matter how many times I tried to read them, but this one I actually finished and I actually enjoyed and actually for the most part hopefully understood. So if you are interested in Black Sun, because I'm sure you've seen it all over the place, it does live up to the hype that it's been getting. The next book was an audiobook. It was Out: How to Be Your Authentic Self by Miles McKenna. This is a memoir from a YouTuber, Miles McKenna, and I'm not someone who usually reads YouTuber kind of memoirs, I guess, but I was interested in this one because I've been watching Miles since I was in middle school. I kind of fell off the boat with watching YouTubers like that, so I was definitely surprised when I saw Miles McKenna's book on NetGalley. It was definitely a throwback to my YouTube watching days in middle school, so I had to request that one. I got it, and it ended up being just as great as I was expecting it to be. If you don't know who Miles McKenna is, he is a transgender YouTuber who kind of just posts whatever. I guess you would say he's kind of like a humor, comedy, but also sometimes serious YouTuber. Oh my gosh, that's a terrible explanation. This memoir is a combination of Miles's own personal experiences, both related to his friends and family and also YouTube, but he also offers a lot of explanations and advice and just some tips for how to be your true self. I think I really appreciated this as an audiobook. I mean, it probably helped that I was familiar with Miles and his voice, but I really loved the subtle humor paired with very real, serious conversations. Overall, if you're looking for a rather comforting type memoir, this is the one for you. It might not offer anything new to your understandings of LGBT acceptance and identity, but I did find it to be a very inspiring, comforting type of memoir. The next book I listened to as an audiobook was We Are Not Free. It's a YA novel, historical fiction, and it's about a couple Japanese American teenagers during the Second World War. I knew this book was going to be emotional because it does take place during World War II, during the mass incarceration of Japanese Americans, but it was way more emotional than I was even prepared for. I mean, the first half of the book is immensely sad, as expected, but the second half of the book, especially the last chunk of the book, it was beautifully written and terribly emotional. I had to keep taking breaks from this book because it was a lot to stomach all at once, as expected. Again, it takes place during war. Overall, I really did appreciate the author's take on this historical event. She did really create such beautiful, whole, real characters, and the writing style was gorgeous. I mean, this is really the kind of book that it's almost guaranteed you will love it because the characters and the story, the plot, everything is just so beautifully intertwined and so emotional and really focuses on what makes humans human. The next book I read was Picture Us in the Light. I've been wanting to read this book for so long and I finally got the chance to read it. It is a YA contemporary about a boy, and he has many different conflicts in his life. He has problems with his family, who are holding many secrets, which are slowly revealed throughout the book. He has some problems with his school. He really wants to do art, and he does get into the school of his dreams, but there's problems with that too that are later revealed in the book. There's some problems with friendship and, again, family, and there's just a lot going on in this poor guy's life. There is a lot, but overall I really loved the themes in this book. The characters were wonderful. There was a lot of emotional scenes, and I was surprised how well thought out and developed the plot was. A lot of times quiet contemporaries like this are focused more on the characters, and this book was, but I was again surprised with how detailed the plot was. It wasn't just the characters. The plot had a lot of interesting elements in it, which I again appreciated. Just putting a trigger warning on here for mentioned suicide, but if you are okay with that, I thought this was such a beautiful book, so delicately balanced with all of the different themes in there, because there is a lot in this book, just a lot. goes down, but I would definitely say that this is something you should read if you do enjoy YA contemporaries that are more on the quieter side. So for the next book, since October was Filipino American Heritage Month, I read Patron Saints of Nothing. This book was beautiful. It's about a boy who's biracial. He's half white, half Filipino, raised in the United States, just like I am, and he finds out that his cousin has been murdered in the Philippines, so he travels to the Philippines to find out what has happened with his cousin because no one really wants to talk about it. There's a lot that happens in this book, especially since the event that triggers self-discovery is in fact murder. There's such great discussions of culture, especially from someone who does identify as Filipino but doesn't really know much about his culture. If you're interested in a book that deals with grief, family, friends, culture, discovering one's identity, this is really a great one. I don't see many books with Filipino rep, so I really appreciated that, and I think I would definitely recommend this to anyone. And again, I really enjoyed reading about a character that I could very personally relate to. The next book I read was The Astonishing Color of After. It is a YA contemporary book, but it incorporates elements of magical realism in it. It's about a girl who's coping with the death of her mother who had committed suicide, and there's just a lot going on in her life with her dad and of course the death of her mother and her own friendships and relationships. After the death of her mother, the main character starts to see her mom as a bird, and no one really believes her that her mom has come back as a bird, but the character really does genuinely see this bird and believes that it's her mom. This is another book with biracial rep, half Taiwanese and half white, and again, as someone who is half white, half Asian, I appreciated that element of the book. But towards the beginning of the book, the character travels with her dad to Taiwan to meet her family, and a lot happens in Taiwan regarding the death of her mom and the main character's own self-discoveries. I think the most striking element of this book was the writing style. There's this theme of colors in the book. That's the way that the character describes her emotions, and I just thought it was so beautiful and creative, and the writing was just fantastic. I really loved it. If you can deal with very sad books like this one, I would definitely recommend it. Again, it was beautiful and I thought every page was worth it. I loved the relationships that the character formed or tried to repair, or all the struggles that she deals with, and overall it's just gorgeous book about grief and relationships with friends and family. The last book I read was on Halloween, so I tried to make it kind of a spooky one. I read My Sister the Serial Killer. It's a tiny, cute little book, very short, very quick read, and it's about this woman who has a sister who's this gorgeous, gorgeous woman who just attracts all the men except she's a serial killer. She has killed over 3 men, which makes her a serial killer, and the sister, the main character, always gets dragged into these killings, and it's just a lot for her to deal with. It's hard for her to decide whether to side with her sister or her own moral beliefs, and it's very confusing for her. I will admit I was a bit disappointed with this book. The writing style was beautiful, which is why I was kind of disappointed because it had so much potential, but overall I just felt like nothing really happened, despite the murders. But I thought it was going to be more of a thriller type mystery book, but there was no thrill or mystery. It was psychologically very interesting, and as a psych major, I really appreciated that component, but nothing really happened. The sister was described as a serial killer, and then she did some killings, but that was it. There was nothing unpredictable or exciting. It was just this analysis of the characters, and just, again, there was not much to it, and I really wanted more from this book. And that was all the books I read in October. Again, I've definitely read more in previous months, but I think this was a lot, again, since it's the school year and I work and I just, don't have a lot of time to read, and I read quite a few good ones, so I'm impressed with myself. I enjoyed this month. I love October, and I am sad that it's over. We are off into the cold months, which is disappointing, but that's okay. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. This was, it's kind of, The third book I read this month was oh my gosh. It really is a book that makes you want to empathize. It had such a great so I was surprised to see Miles McKenna's book on Netflix.